Welcome back, everybody. My name is Tim. This is another Real Ideal Gear review, and today we're choosing one chronograph from my collection of chronographs here. And I have a few quartz movements in here. I have some mechanical movements, just a variety of different things going on with these quartz watches. And the thing about these quartz watches, I'm looking at these, and these series of, if I can only have just one, gives me a chance to take all of the watches of a certain kind, put them together, and really observe what it is that I have. Sometimes you buy things one at a time. You don't realize the collection that you have, the variety that you have, or maybe the redundancy that you have. And I'm finding that the variety that I have in chronographs is really appealing. I mean, I think there's some things about each one of these watches that's very unique from the other. I don't see a lot of repetition. Sometimes when I get in my dive watches, and you can see the previous video on the dive watch, if I only have one dive watch, you're going to see some, there's some similarities between some of the watches. They're not that much different, maybe different colors, a little bit different bezel or something. But these watches are very different from each other. Maybe a couple, that one pair that might be kind of close together as far as description goes. But that's one of the things I think about choosing just one, is forcing me to look at some of these things and what is it that I really like about these chronographs. So we're going to go through the categories that I have here, which are loom, the handset, how attractive and maybe unique, just the handset itself. Is it distinct? Is the hour hand distinctive from the minute hand? And then we're going to go into legibility. We're going to talk about the legibility of the subdials. We're going to talk about the legibility of the main dial as far as telling time. And then we'll get into the subdial preference that I have, which is that the subdial time totaler would be more than 1 hour. And when you deal with the ST 1901 movement, you're not going to get that. You're going to get a 30-minute time totaler. You're going to get a 30-minute time totaler. So right off the bat, those watches are at a slight disadvantage. But there's also watches like the Hamilton and the Zeppelin that have 12 hours for sure. And the Zeppelin, I think it goes even further than that. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at the wearable circumstances for these watches. So under what circumstances can these watches be worn? And can they be worn under multiple circumstances? And then also the uniqueness of the chronograph. And that's kind of where I've just paused and looked at these watches and think, man, I have some really unique watches going on here. I really like that. Water resistance. If it has 100 meters of water resistance, 50 meters of water resistance, or less than that, that's kind of the standard when it comes down to just the protection of the watch itself. With chronographs, you've got a lot more moving parts. You've got a lot more potential intrusions of water into the case because you've got the pushers in there. So there's a lot of opportunity for that with the design. So anything that has 100 meters of water resistance is actually a very significant thing to have, especially with a chronograph. And then we'll look at movement. And this is where we're going to separate these into two categories when it comes down to the rating. We're going to have the quartz chronographs, and then we'll have the mechanical, whether it's manual wind or automatic wind, chronographs. Okay, so we're actually going to have two categories when we're done. So when I choose just one, it's going to be one out of each of those movement types, because the quartz movements, there's some things about quartz that you can get a much thinner quartz movement than you can a mechanical movement, more or less. So unless it's a really expensive chronograph, but we're going to keep that those two categories separate. So let's get into this and talk about each of these categories fairly quickly. And we're going to go through with the loom first. And you can see the loom here in the video and which watches really suffered, which watches really excelled, frankly. And the Sugis M199 just does not have looms at all. So to mark this down as bad loom or whatever is really unfair to the design because it doesn't have any loom. So we'll separate that one when it comes down to just pulling out the watches that we move into the next category towards the end here. But that's one that does not have any loom. The rest of them have some loom of some sort. And so we look at the watches that have loom. Of course, the ones that stand out the best are the Zeppelin. Okay, the Zeppelin, 8680, I believe it is. That's the model number. The Baltany Vintage Military Chronograph, excellent loom. Baltany does a great job with loom overall. That's an Aliexpress, and the Zeppelin, you can get that through probably eBay. I've gone through, Chrono 24 to get this one. There's a couple others I have tagged on there as well. And then the Hamilton Khaki Field Chronograph is another great loom dialed watch. The ones that kind of really suffered that had loom was the Sugis 62 and the Pierre Pauline Vintage Chronograph. Those two kind of suffered. The rest were kind of average. And really, when it comes to a chronograph, you're not going to get a lot of loom on there because the handset is typically smaller, unless you get a really big dial. Like this Hamilton Khaki Field has a very large dial compared to the rest. I think it's 44 millimeters in diameter. The Zeppelin might be close to that. But yeah, so when you have a bigger dial, you have the ability to afford more loom on the hour markers, on the handset, and so on. Next up is the handset. Which are the ones that really did really well? The Baltany handset. I really love the Baltany handset. You've got a little bit of red on the second hand. The hour hand is distinguished from the minute hand. Very easy to read, the handset. I just really like the handset on there. The Zeppelin is one that really struggles in my mind, but it doesn't struggle terribly. It's just a really busy handset. So to me, that's one that, yeah, it's got that brigade type handset, which is a little bit harder to read, harder to interpret. The Sugis 62 is kind of difficult too. The Hamilton, I love the Hamilton. I love the Red Star chronograph, the bullhead. Great handset on there. Who else had it? The M99, 199, just a great classic handset. For some reason, I can read this one really easily. I have a little more difficulty with the Sugis 62 versus the 199. And the Pierre Pauline, of course, you've got the high contrast. The handset itself is not real obvious. It's not real, I shouldn't say real distinctive between the hour hand and the minute hand. And the Vero, that one works. I think the hour hand is shorter. I think it's almost half the length of the minute hand. Typically, you get it to be, I think it's just over half when it comes to the length of the hour hand. So this one's just under. So for some reason, it stands out a little bit more. And the handset on the Daytona, it's difficult. You have polish with a little bit of loom in there and different angles of light, and they just kind of blend in a little bit more than they should. So I'm not real pleased with the Daytona, but it's okay. It works. Now, legibility of time and the subdial. Let's start with the subdials. Which are the subdials that I struggle with the most? Let's see here. It is the 62, the Baltany, and the Zeppelin. The Zeppelin is just really busy. Okay, the handset on here, the subdials on here are very busy. This 6 o'clock subdial actually has two hands, and so does the 9 o'clock also has a two-hand set as well. The Baltany, because it's a polished handset, they blend into the dial pretty quickly with a dark dial background. The Daytona has a polished handset, but you can see them a lot better against the white background. Okay, 199 looks great. The Vero looks great. You have the white handset on the Red Bull, or the Red Star, not the Red Bull, the Red Star. The Hamilton Khaki kind of suffers a little bit from that as well. So you kind of get the pattern for this. Now, as far as the main dial legibility, the hardest one to read by far is the Zeppelin. The hour markers, that's the one thing when I wear this watch, is I actually have a hard time seeing where the hour markers are. So that to me is, it's difficult. The rest of these are pretty good. I don't mind them too much. The Sugis Daytona and the Pierre Pauline, they blend a little bit into the background, but the rest of them have a really good contrasty type hour marker set. So the legibility of telling the time, I think, is actually pretty good. The subdial 1 hour. Which of these actually goes over an hour? We have the Hamilton does that, and the Zeppelin does that, and also the Daytona does that. The rest of these are at an hour or less. The Vero, which is quartz, is at 60 minutes, 30 minutes on all the ST1901 movements, and then the quartz movement over here in the Baltany is 60 minutes as well. So yeah, I prefer to have more than an hour because sometimes I wear these watches to work. Like I wear the Vero to work. I have worn, obviously, the Baltany. I've worn the Hamilton Khaki. Now, this one has a 12-hour time totaler. This one has a 60-minute. And then the Vero has a 60-minute as well. So the ST1901 movements just don't work for me for work. They're also dressier anyway, so it's not a huge deal. But I just really like to have something more than an hour. Wearable circumstances. Where else can you wear this other than just casual kind of office type setting? Can you get into the dress and formal? You absolutely can with all of the ST1901 movements. I think the Red Star, Pierre Pauline, the M199, the 62, the Zeppelin, obviously the Daytona. You're not going to get it with the two field watches or the Vero. So they're just not going to score as high. All right, uniqueness. Now, this is one where I just sat back and looked at these watches. And I said, okay, which of these watches is actually unique? Very different from the other. Okay. The Zeppelin, definitely unique. Love the Zeppelin. I don't wear this as much as I used to. I'm going to start wearing it more again because I just really like the looks of this watch. The Red Star Bullhead. The Bullhead design itself, if you have not spent some time around a Bullhead design watch, this is really a fantastic looking watch. Okay. I love the M199. I think that's a really unique look. I know it's an homage, but at the same time, it's just a unique look when you compare it to some of these other things. Now, the Pierre Pauline and the 62, they have that ST1901, that variation from the 1963 military chronograph from China. So that to me is there. It's unique to a degree, but it's just not unique enough. You change the font a little bit, or maybe the colors, it's just not enough. But when you start putting different dials in here, or the orientation of the pushers is different, or you've just got a really radical looking dial with all kinds of stuff on there, I just really like the looks of those things. Water resistance. All right, the ones that have 100 meters of water resistance are the Hamilton Khaki, the Daytona, the Baltony. They all have 100 meters of water resistance. The one that has the worst is the Zeppelin. It doesn't even have 50 meters of water resistance. So that one, let me double check that because now that I think about this, I think I'm wrong. I think it's actually better than that. It's 50. Okay, so I have to change the score a little bit. Not a huge change. I thought it was 30. But that's 50 meters of water resistance. The rest of these are 50 meters of water resistance or better. The Vero is actually over 100. I think it's 125. So we have three of them. 4 of them that are 100 meters or better, and then we've got the rest are at 50. Okay, and then the movement, we've got 3 quarts. We've got a quartz movement here, we got a quartz movement here, and also the Zeppelin. So we've got 3 quartz movements that are going to be segregated when we do this final countdown here. So what do we have as far as the scores go? All right, now the Zeppelin, I got to change the score here because that's going to go up. Let's see, where's water resistance? So that's going to be... Okay. Yeah, it does change it a little bit. All right. So for quartz, we have the Zeppelin and the Baltony that are tied in first place. The Vero is a very, very close second. Okay. Very, very close second. Now, when it comes down to the mechanical, it's the Daytona, the Red Star. Let's pull these guys out. And let's take the top 3, the Hamilton Khaki. Okay. So these 3 are the top 3. All right. Get these out of the way here. All right. So when it comes down to, let's start with the quartz. When it comes to the quartz, which watch am I going to go with as far as if I had to choose just one, which one would I go with? Let me give you a little background on these two. Watch the reviews on these two because these two actually have some very unique differences. There is, on this watch, on the Zeppelin, of course, you have this massive time totaler on here. It's a quartz movement, grab and go. They're both quartz movements. You don't have to have the screw down pushers on here, which I like, and it's still 50 meters of water resistance. That's pretty good. This is 100 meters, the Baltony. But what's on the Zeppelin is an alarm. There is a quartz alarm on here. The 6 o'clock subdial is actually its own timekeeping dial that you set separately from the main timekeeping dial. It also has a date down here as well. The Baltony has 100 meters of water resistance. It's tough as nails. You have a bead blasted case, sapphire crystal. There's just a lot of good things about these two. So if I'm looking for a dressier watch versus a more, work type watch, that might be where I start to throw down a difference here. Now, before I make the decision on this, I'm going to look at these three, because if I end up with a dressier watch here, I'll probably go with the Baltony, or vice versa. If I have a dressier watch here, I'll probably go with a not so dressy watch, which, boy, this is going to be a little bit tougher. All right, so this is the top three. So we have the Daytona, the Red Star, and the Hamilton Khaki. All right, so we have good water resistance on all three of these. The Khaki is massive. Like this is a heavy-duty watch. Now, I've put a different bracelet on here. This is the Razor bracelet. I forget what, I think this is not Strapco. I think there's another company out there. But anyway, this is the Razor bracelet. I think it looks really cool with this. It just kind of makes the whole thing look, yeah, pretty cool. ST1901 movement, great design. I love this is the most unique one of the three. And then you have the classic Daytona homage over here. It is the Daytona homage. This is an automatic watch. It is not a manual wind. It's automatic. Keeps really good time. High beat movement over here with the Khaki. Boy, that's tough. All five of these are going to be tough. I think I'm going to have to go with a little creativity on the quartz side. I think I'm going to have to go with the Zeppelin. Full lume dial, okay? Really unique in a lot of different ways. The Baltony is cool, but it's one of those watches that just doesn't have enough uniqueness to it to really kind of push it through. So I'm going to hang on to that one for the quartz. When it comes to the mechanical, the top score getter, let's see here. Let's just see if there's a huge difference. Yeah, it's somewhat. It's actually between these two, and I do like the Hamilton Khaki, but it's just not quite there for me. Let's reset this. There we go. Man, that is tough. This is the toughest one of all the bunch. I think I'm going to go with crap. I don't know what decision to make. All right, let's go by thickness. All right, let's take a look at thickness. If we go like this, I think a thinner watch will be better, and that's going to go to the Daytona. The Daytona also was the highest scoring of these three. Got 23 points. The Red Star got 22. And the Khaki got 21, so it was just down by 1 point as we moved down the list. So, yeah, I'm going to go with the Daytona. We've got a sporty watch. We've got kind of a dressier watch. So if I could only have just one, I'm going to go with these two. I've got a great automatic movement. It's a Chinese knockoff movement, if you want to call it that. It's an automatic movement, high beat movement. It has a great time totaler. A little bit harder to read. Yeah, that's where I'm going to change my mind. Yep. Because I have a harder one to read over here with the Zeppelin. I need something a little bit easier to read. This is much more legible, really unique. I mean, we're splitting hairs here. This is why I have a hard time with these watches. They're so unique. So I'm going to go with these two. These are the two I'm going to go with. I'm going to go with the Red Star, ST1901 manual wind movement. Great push. It's just a unique pushers. Great visual on the legibility on the dial with the handset. You've got a really, really unique quartz setup over here. And here's kind of a cool feature of this. When you hit rewind, you're going to have, it's not a flyback, it's going to be what I call a wind back to zeros on there. So there you go. Those are the two that I'm going to choose. Put your comments down below what you think of these choices. Did you pick the ones that I picked? These are such different watches. It's really hard for me to pick. So let me know what you came up with, and let me know if there's any chronographs out there that you'd like me to review. These are typically the more expensive watches on the market, so I'm pretty selective as far as which ones I pick. And we'll take a look at those if we can and put some in here that we can review. So visit my website, realidealgear.com, for any of these watches that I've reviewed that I have for sale. There's some good deals there. There's also some combo deals with some Casios and flashlights and things like that. So check that out. Really appreciate it. We'll catch you guys next time.